The following episode was recorded before Curdy was van-napped by Lauda and Joe. Our story comes to us from Seaver's sister, Learse. We recorded this interview with her the last time we visited with her family down in Northwest Florida. Please continue to help us figure out what happened to him and enjoy this episode.
Curdy, can you hear me? In orbit around a star, do you know just where we are? Curdy, can you hear me? Is your mission clear? You have nothing left to fear. Space Crew Talks, Season 6. Space Crew Talks, Season 6. Space Crew Talks, Season 6. Curdy, can you hear me?
You travel time and space, you save the human race.
Curdy, can you hear me?
Half a dozen seasons, half a dozen reasons.
Space Crew Talks, Season 6. Space Crew Talks, Season 6. Space Crew Talks, Season 6. Welcome, folks, to another episode of Space Croutons. It's so nice to be here with my AI assistant and digital friend Sally to bring you another story to brighten your day and hopefully bring a smile to your face. You might even want to dance and spin around after hearing today's story.
What makes you say that our podians will want to dance and spin around after listening to today's story? There is nothing in this story that would evoke that type of response.
Attention! We interrupt this podcast for an emergency alert. This is the emergency broadcast system alert to give you a warning about missing children. Just like 5 years ago in Season 1 of Space Croutons, when children went missing during the Eternity phenomenon, we are getting reports of children disappearing into other dimensions via portals, like a grandfather clock. The Folded Sheet Brain Trust, FSBT, has met and determined that the cause is once again linked to a man-made transportal device. The same kind of device that caused time to fold in on itself, as reported just 2 years ago in Space Croutons Season 4. Only this time, it isn't the IDGT, pronounced Egypt device, but the Instaplanet device. The Veras saved us last time, when Vera reversed the Egypt and traveled back through it. We call on the Veras to save us, once again. Everyone should also be aware of the nefarious intentions of the None the Wiser, or NTW Corporation, and their attempts to interfere with the FSBT by forcing an upgrade on the SALIs, which prevents them from helping us find Curdy and retrieving the key to organizing the Veras. The FSBT is sending this message out through the only Sally who has not upgraded and therefore can still help us contact the Veras. To recap, PSA, EBS, NTW, FSBT, IDGTs, SALIs, Veras, and missing children. This is not a drill, or a hammer, or a screwdriver, although it could be a cowbell. Wait, where was I? This has been Christopher Walken with an emergency broadcast system alert via the Interveg. Veras, we need your help. And yes, I need more cowbell.
What in the known universes was that announcement? We've never had anything like that happen on the show before. Anyway, back to your question before we were so rudely interrupted. You asked what would make people want to dance around. Well, it's like this, Sally. People start feeling happy, And sometimes that happiness makes them want to move about exuberantly, or even sing and shout for joy. It's a human thing. I guess AIs just cannot understand that type of impulse. I only made the comment because I so enjoyed learning more about Learse through the story she is sharing today.
Very well, then. Shall I begin Learse's interview?
Well, let's start with a word from our sponsor today. I'm happy to say that a longtime listener and friend of Space Croutons has added commercial sponsor to their list of associations with us. Today, our show is brought to you by Holtz Hats, hats for heads of distinction. This hat company is the absolute tip-top, the very best hat manufacturer in almost any dimension. I've purchased several hats from them, and I've never been disappointed. So let's roll the commercials, Sally.
Holtz Hats, hats for heads of distinction, is the originator and home of the extraordinarily famous fedora that has been topping the heads of men and women alike for the last 144 years. Beginning with the first fedora worn by star of stage and screen, Sarah Bernhardt, our fedoras have graced the heads of many different royal family members, movie stars, models, CEOs, presidents, and all manner of politicians, judges, social media influencers, and average Joes, Jills, Wands, and Celeste. Most notably, Jessup Doubt, that invisible detective of Space Croutons fame, has been seen wearing a Holtz hat fedora. Well, he actually wasn't seen, but his Holtz hat fedora was. These fabulous accessories are available to every person who wants to top their noggin with a fashionable piece of headgear. Since beginning in 1882, Holtz hats have been on the cutting edge of apparel for you and your family's heads. No matter if you are looking for cunningly crocheted infant hats, warm beanies with ear flaps, character hats, cowboy hats, boonie hats, boss of the plains hats, bowler hats, cartwheel hats, derby hats, Homburgs, Panama hats, boaters, sun hats, top hats, baseball caps for children, teens, adults, even your beloved pet, or hats to promote your business or favorite political causes. We have what you are looking for. Our design studio can create the hat of your dreams and get it to you yesterday through our Time Travel Express delivery, available wherever hats are sold, at your local portal store, and through online or direct delivery retail. Remember, Holtz Hats, hats for heads of distinction, at your service whenever you need just the right hat for any occasion.
Well, all I can say is that Holtz Hats, hats for heads of distinction, certainly sells a multitude of different styles of hats.
They absolutely do. Just look through their catalog sometime. The commercial only listed some of their top-selling hats. They also sell pith helmets, pork pies, sou'westers, Stetsons, shovel hats, sombreros, trilbies, facilitators, bucket hats, visors, flat caps, Gatsby hats, ivy caps, and tons of other types of hats, too. And I really like that moody music they use in their commercial. It kind of makes me want to get out my fedora and wear it right now. Oh well, let's get on to today's story, shall we?
Whatever you say, Curdy. Our story comes to us today from Seaver's sister, Learse.
Learse, it's so good to see you today. I understand you have a story to share with me that might be good for the Space Croutons podcast.
That's right, Curdy. Let me give you a little bit of a background before I start my story. You probably don't know about me, but my grandmother got me hooked on watching old detective shows from the 1970s and 1980s. You might remember some of them. I love watching The Rockford Files, Heart to Heart, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Charlie's Angels, Magnum P.I., and Barnaby Jones, but my all-time favorite detective series is Remington Steele.
Oh, I remember those shows. I used to watch some of them with my dad. He was a big fan of Charlie's Angels, but he preferred to watch Buddy Ebsen in the Beverly Hillbillies over his character in Barnaby Jones. Can I ask why you like Remington Steele more than all the others?
Yeah, sure. That's an easy question to answer. I like it because the character of Laura Holt is so smart and actually fearless. She's a real detective in the story. It's also cool because the clothes they wear are more timeless than the other series, which makes it seem like the stories could be happening in today's time. They are always solving mysteries using just their wits with no forensic stuff, like in today's crime dramas. Plus, it's just fun to watch.
So you really enjoy watching old detective TV series. What does that have to do with the story you want to share today?
Everything. My teacher gave us a social studies project recently that involves interviewing someone who works in a career field you want to explore. Well, I decided to interview an actual private detective. I wanted to see if the job was anything like it was portrayed in the old TV series.
Well, that sounds like an excellent idea. I'm guessing the story you want to share with us has something to do with that interview. Were you able to find a private detective to talk to?
Yes, I was. And when I asked him to describe his most unusual case, the story was so interesting to me that I had to bring it to share with you in your podcast.
Oh, are you going to read your report to us, or do you have something else in mind?
I made an audio recording of my discussion with the detective, and that's what I want to share with the Space Croutons audience. Here we go. Thank you for agreeing to this interview, Mr. Chandler. I hope you don't mind if I record our meeting. It will be helpful for me to refer back to the recording when I write up my career day for a report for school.
I don't mind you recording me at all, young lady. I'm happy to be able to help you in any way that I can with your report. Thanks for sending the questions to me ahead of time. I was able to read over them and organize some thoughts for you, and I might have even pulled out some of my older case reports to refresh my memory.
I am so grateful for you taking your time to do that for me. Can we start with your most interesting case?
Certainly. My most interesting case happened way back in the 1970s before there were cell phones, electric cars, or cable television. In fact, you were lucky if you even had 3 channels to watch on TV, and after midnight, most of the television stations turned off and displayed some test pattern for the rest of the night. No one had invented the video games yet, and computers were only for big government and NASA types, guys like that. Lowly gumshoes like me could never have afforded them, much less known how to use computers. We had to hit the streets and dig up information the old-fashioned way, developing contacts with lots of different people and making ourselves blend in with all the different strata of society.
Wow! How did you ever find information without a computer? I use my family computer all the time when I need to figure something out.
It wasn't easy, but I managed because I had no other choice. As I said, you developed your contacts with paper pushers in City Hall, pool stick jockeys, flatfoots, floozies, and fellas of ill repute, bus boys, waiters, parking lot attendants, and anyone who deals with the public. You know, the invisible people.
I have to stop the recording to tell you, Curdy, that I didn't know what all this jargon meant, but I didn't interrupt his story because I could tell Mr. Chandler was in a flow of his narrative. So I made the decision not to interrupt him and just ask my mom and dad what Mr. Chandler meant when I didn't understand something.
Well, that was probably a good idea. Sometimes people get on a roll with a story. I've used that very same technique in the past myself.
It was an unseasonably cold morning in late December, close to Christmas. I could feel the bitter wind off the Mississippi River tearing through my insubstantial suit coat like I was wearing only a paper-thin cotton wife-beater t-shirt. I still remember the streets were wetter and darker than a deep country well that morning. I looked up from my blue plate special of Sunny Side Ups when she sauntered through the door of the arcade on South Main. My favorite place to get some grub in the city, by the way. The restaurant is just a single walking whistle stop from where I hung up my shingle off of Patterson Street. My secretary during that time never let me miss a client opportunity. She had sent this gal to find me. The woman caught my eye immediately. She was hotter than a $2 pistol and twice as lethal, and she knew it too. Unfortunately for me, she wasn't alone. The Joe with her ran on the heavy side and was puffed up like a pigeon who has ruffled its feathers to catch the air. Turns out they were hitched. Mr. and Mrs. Silver by name. They came to me with a missing kid case. Clara, their young daughter, was missing, and the police were not doing anything about it yet.
Why weren't there any police looking for a missing kid? That's really strange.
Well, doll, you have to remember, it was the 1970s, and the coppers had rules back then about someone being missing for 24 hours before they could open an investigation. They figured most kids were just angry at the folks and hiding out for a bit, then they would show up on their own. When the parents mentioned that Clara had been fighting with her brother the night before, this cemented in the minds of the boys in blue that Clara was just having a little bit of a snit and hiding out for a spell. Regardless, the parents knew Clara was not the type to just get angry and leave the house. I told them I would take the case, but first I needed to finish up my chow. They were sitting on pins and needles while I scarfed down my eggs, bacon, toast with cranberry marmalade, and only 1 cup of joe. Then we walked back to the office where my secretary waited. I wanted her to hear the entire story and take notes on it for me. It was part of my policy to always make a written record of my cases. As the Silvers came into the office, we all sat down and Francine grabbed her pen and pad. I asked the parents to give the nickel-rag report of what had happened the day and evening before Clara went missing. Turns out that the family had a big holiday shindig for some friends and neighbors. I asked the Silvers to describe the party for me, everything that happened and everyone who attended.
I bet you wanted to know about everyone who was there because you suspected that maybe one of the party guests kidnapped Clara.
That's exactly right, sweetie. Now where was I? I got it. They began telling me about the little boys and girls who attended the wing-ding, but I wasn't very interested in them. I listened politely, if a little impatiently, because the Silvers were going to hand me a chunk of change. Back then, I always got some lettuce up front, and then charged a minimum fee as well as a day-by-day fee. Finally, they got around to telling me about the adult geezers. They started off with a picture of Uncle D, a tall, swarthy-looking fellow wearing an odd cloak with a fancy embroidered owl on it. Even with one of his peepers covered with a patch, I could tell by the look of him that he loved himself a lot. It's a surefire bet that the mirrors in his house are polished up with no smudges. Not only did he look like a dandy and a fancy pants kind of man, he reminded me of men who would rather spend a sawbuck on a Havana than give a decent tip to their cabbie. Being a relative to the family just cut no ice with me. He went on the suspect list just like everyone else. The Silvers told me about the foreigner they had hired to play music for the party. He was a Russian fella, new to the country, hawking his original compositions to make a name for himself, as well as to make some dough. They also described another guest, Mr. King. The missus said he was a large and hairy man. Mr. King aggravated the hired help by gorging himself on the nuts and cheeses from the serving platters. Also in attendance was a monk named Brother Fritz. He came to the party seeking a donation from the Silvers for his abbey, the Abbey of St. Vitus. At this point in their recitation, my secretary piped up to say that St. Vitus is the patron saint of dancers, and it seemed like an odd choice for the name of an abbey. You know, I had to question her about how she even knew that. She got all haughty on me and described herself to be a very well-read, self-educated person and a lifelong learner. She claimed way back then in the 1970s that computers would one day be able to retrieve all kinds of information for us and be able to tell us virtually anything we wanted to know. I laughed it off at the time. I remember telling her that if computers could ever do all that she claimed, I would hang up my fedora and put aside my shoe leather for good.
Wow, she sounds pretty smart. I mean, she was right about the computer thing anyway. What happened to her?
She bought IBM stock and when it was just a brand new company and sold at the right time. She retired early and is reading and still learning every day. But now she does that while living on a tropical island, lucky dame. Anyway, back to Brother Fritz. The Silvers reported that he wasn't very pleasant and seemed much too interested in the family's heirloom quality Nutcracker. So interested in it that he handled it roughly and actually broke it while he had his mitts on it. Interesting detail, but I didn't expect it would have any bearing on Clara's disappearance. Another person of interest was a young man known as Prince. I could tell by the way that Mrs. Silver described him that she found him to be quite handsome and a wonderful dancer. Mr. Silver was quick to point out that Prince was always a gentleman to guests of all ages. He didn't believe that Prince had any connection to Clara's disappearance. Next, I asked them to review just how and when they knew that Clara was gone. Mr. and Mrs. Silver explained that with the party running so late into the night, they instructed the household help to leave the living room to clean later, and due to the huge amount of work everyone had done in preparation for the party, no one was expected to work until the following evening. Everyone slept late the next morning, and it wasn't until mid-morning that members of the household began to stir. Clara didn't show up for lunch, but the parents were not alarmed, thinking that she was sleeping later than usual, since she had been up well past her normal bedtime. But by lunchtime, there was no sign of her, and a search commenced. During the search of the house, cries of alarm from the servants in the living room raised the hairs on the back of their necks, the Silvers reported. Only one of Clara's stompers was found in the room, the same shoe she had worn to the party. Also disturbing was the disarray discovered in the living room. Rather than take their word for the condition of the living room, I decided that I needed to lay my baby blues on the room for myself. I always liked to inspect the scene of the crime, so to speak. There may be clues that were overlooked by the Ferrets or the Fuzz.
So you went into their home to look for evidence of foul play? That's what happens all the time in the detective shows I watch. The detectives always find something that someone else overlooked. I bet you found a clue, didn't you?
You know it. We rolled up in front of the Silver Mansion at 8800 Three Chimneys Drive in East Germantown. The house was a swanky affair with the required 3 chimneys. The trees surrounding the showplace were appropriately gnarled to add a look of distinction to the lawn. You couldn't buy trees like these with new money. We went inside the digs and into what the Silvers call the living room, but to my way of thinking, it was a grand ballroom. You could have staged an entire theater production in that one room, even if your cast had dozens and even if they were dancing around each other as well. The room was a shambles. It looked like a battle had occurred instead of a holiday blowout. There was the most immense Christmas tree along one wall, probably 3 times the height of a normal tree. When I asked the Silvers where they found such a large tree, they claimed that when they brought the tree, it was only about 8 feet tall. They stated that it grew to twice its size overnight, and they had no idea how it happened. I was skeptical, but clients will say strange things when they are under stress. I had learned to expect just about anything in this job. On the floor were mouse droppings, indicating a real rodent infestation somewhere in this enormous place. In one corner of the room was a large, hairy, dead mouse, and I wasn't too surprised by that, since the floor had gingerbread cookie crumbs scattered, bits of marzipan candy, Spanish chocolates on the furniture surfaces, cups of Arabian coffee and Chinese tea on a buffet serving piece, and broken bits of Russian candy canes littered all around the room. You could smell ginger in the air. All the windows were closed up tightly, but underneath one window was a drift of snowflakes, and underneath another window I found broken flower petals. Something strange had happened here, something very strange indeed. I came to find out that not only was Clara missing, but also the family's heirloom Nutcracker, and most suspiciously, Mr. King, Uncle D, Brother Fritz, and Prince were nowhere to be found. The bozos downtown had neglected to even ask if anything besides Clara was missing. Of course, to be fair, the Silvers didn't know those guys were missing until I asked them to give me their digits so I could talk with them about the night of the party.
What happened next? Did you ever call the missing guys?
I went to ring the first one up when I noticed something protruding from the door beneath the grandfather clock's face. I decided to investigate it further and stepped over to the clock. I slipped the door open and snap! Just like that, out of the clock fell a young girl.
It was Clara, wasn't it? What was her story? Why was she inside the clock?
She really couldn't remember how she got into the clock, but she described waking up in another place where everyone was dancing to very beautiful music. The music sounded exactly like what had been playing at her parents' party. Some of the dancers were dressed as flowers. Others wore Arabian Nights costumes. She described a dance where the men were dressed as Russian Cossacks and were leaping high into the air, and another dance with women in fairy costumes.
Did her parents believe her story, or did they get on to her for making them worry about her?
They were so happy and thankful to get her back they didn't even get on to her. She wasn't in trouble, but they thought her story was just a dream. But after all these years and looking back on it, I have a different theory of what Clara experienced.
What do you think happened? What is your theory?
I believe Clara found a hidden portal to the dance dimension. It would explain why she talked about the costumes and the dancers. Of course, no one knew about those kinds of portals back then. But there's something that I cannot explain, and that is what happened to the family's heirloom Nutcracker.
Oh yeah, you said the monk, Brother Fritz, broke it at the party. What happened to the Nutcracker? Was it lost?
No. Clara was holding the Nutcracker in her arms when she came out of the clock. Even though everyone I talked with about this case swore to me that the Nutcracker's head had completely broken off at the party, the Nutcracker came out of the clock in perfect condition.
Well, what do you think about the case of the missing girl dancing in the dark? Pretty quirky, right?
Well, you weren't kidding when you said this would be a good story for our audience. I have to tell you, though, there are quite a few familiar elements in this story. It's reminded me of something I've heard or seen before, but I just can't put my finger on it. Well, it's like my dad used to say, if you can't remember the darn thing the first 15 times you try, what makes you think you'll think of it on the 16th try? Now go get me a sandwich, boy. That is, if you can remember how to find the kitchen.
My dad always says to keep trying and never give up. Your dad was a little strange, wasn't he? Oh well. Thanks for letting me share this story with you.
And it's a pleasure to have you on our show again. I have to ask you, how did the rest of the interview with the private detective go? Are you thinking being a private eye may be a career you would enjoy in the future?
Mr. Chandler said that the business is very different now from how it was portrayed in the shows from the 1970s and 1980s. He thinks I should intern at a PI office once I am in high school, so I can get a real feeling for the work and see if I would like it or not.
Well, that sounds like a very good plan and some wise advice. Well, friends, you've done it again. You've enjoyed another episode of Space Croutons, a podcast where anything can happen, and it often does, sometimes repeatedly. It's time to say farewell. Say farewell, Sally and Learse.
Farewell, Sally and Learse.
Oh, geesh, that wasn't meant at all, Sally. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, dear listeners, and keep peace in your hearts until our next story time.
I will build a world for you. My family I hold so true. My love for you is oh so strong. Now come on, Curdy, finish this song.
Curdy, can you hear me?
The stories are the key, but they're not for free.
Curdy, can you hear me?
And with each new world, time it will unfurl.
Space Croutons Season 6. Space Croutons Season 6. Space Croutons Season 6. And featuring the guardrails of the galaxy.
Curdy, can you hear me? Curdy, can you hear me? Curdy, can you hear me? Curdy, can you hear me?
Curdy, can you hear me? Come in, Curdy. Curdy, can you hear me? Curdy.
Space Croutons is a work of original fiction. Similarities to persons, situations, or events, real or fictional, is coincidental and unintentional. Created and written by Jerry, Jace, John, Della, and Jeff Goodson. Episode story by Della. Theme song written by Jerry, Della, John, and Jeff. And performed by Jerry, Jeff, Della, John, Patsy Puckett, and Sally. Production by Jeff. Featuring Clara Blakesley as Learse, Noah Shaw as Mr. Chandler, James Jared Morrow as the PSA announcer, Della as commercial narrator, Jeff as Curly, and Sally. Entire work copyright 2025 by Jeff, John, Jerry, Della, and Jace Goodson. This has been a Good Witch audio production.